The night was heavy with silence, the kind of silence that presses on the chest and makes every sound feel louder than it should. Rain poured down from the black sky, running in thin rivers across the streets, hitting the rooftops with sharp notes. A man sat inside his small house, the lights dim, a cup of half-finished coffee resting on the table beside him. He had been restless all night, unable to sleep, though he didn't know why. Something in the air felt strange, as if the storm was carrying more than rain. Then he heard it. A sound so faint it almost blended with the wind. At first he thought it was the creak of wood, or maybe the cry of an animal caught in the storm. But no. It was softer, weaker, almost human yet not quite. It was the sound of someone crying. The man stood slowly, his body tense, his ears straining. To catch the sound again, there it was. A fragile whimper, mixed with the pounding of the rain. He walked to the door, heart beating faster than it should, his hand pausing at the handle as instinct screamed to be cautious. Strange things never came with good reasons, and the storm itself seemed to whisper warnings. But something deeper in him pushed against the fear, some old part of his soul that refused to turn away from a cry for help. He unlocked the door and pulled it open. For a moment, he simply froze. A figure stood in the downpour, cloaked in ragged fabric soaked through with rain. The figure was thin, almost skeletal, trembling from weakness. In her arms, she carried a bundle, wrapped tightly, in glowing cloth that pulsed faintly like dying embers. Her face, half hidden by wet strands of dark hair, was not quite human. Her eyes were larger, shining faintly with a strange light, and her skin carried a faint pattern like silver veins under the surface. She looked like she had walked across a battlefield that the world could not see. Her lips moved, trying to form words, but only a cracked whisper escaped. "Please, help." And then her legs gave way, her body collapsing forward. The man rushed forward on instinct, catching her before she hit the ground. She was light, far too light, as if she'd been starving for weeks. The bundle in her arms shifted, and from within came a sound that pierced deeper than the storm, the fragile cry of a baby. The man carried them inside, kicking the door shut against the rain. He laid her on the couch, his heart pounding as he pulled the bundle from her arms. Carefully, he pulled the cloth back just enough to see. A baby, small and fragile, with eyes shut tight and skin pale against the glow of the fabric. But something was not right. On the child's skin were faint marks, lines that glowed faintly like tiny constellations carved into flesh. The man had never seen anything like it. He wanted to believe it was just exhaustion playing tricks on him, but deep inside, he knew the truth. This was no ordinary child. He turned to the woman. She was breathing shallow, her face pale and drawn, her lips trembling as she tried to speak again. He leaned closer, trying to catch the words. Her voice was weak but urgent, every word forced through pain. "Protect the child. Do not let them take him." Her hand reached out, gripping his sleeve with surprising strength before falling. Weak again. The man felt a chill run down his spine. Protect the child? From who? From what? He wanted to ask. But her eyes had already fluttered shut, her body limp from exhaustion. He looked back at the baby, the glow from the strange cloth, casting eerie shadows on the walls of his quiet home. For a moment, time felt heavy, as though the world outside had shifted into something new and dangerous. Then, just as he was trying to make sense of it all, he noticed movement. The marks on the baby's skin were shifting faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat, glowing brighter with every second. The air in the room felt charged, as though unseen electricity was crawling over his skin. The man stepped back, his heart racing, fear battling against the strange pull he felt toward the child. He wanted to look away, but couldn't. The baby opened its eyes. They were not like human eyes. They glowed faintly, with a depth that looked far older than a newborn should ever hold. For a fleeting second, the man thought he saw shapes inside. Those eyes, like stars burning in the endless dark of space. Then the glow dimmed, the baby's eyes slowly shutting again, leaving only silence. The man stood frozen in the middle of his living room. The storm raging outside, his mind torn between disbelief and dread. A starving stranger had appeared at his door with a baby that was clearly not of this world, and with her last strength she had begged him to protect it. He had no idea what she meant, no idea what danger was coming, but the sound of distant thunder seemed to answer for her. Somewhere beyond the storm, something was moving, searching. The man glanced at the baby again, then at the unconscious woman, felt the weight of a decision pressing down on him. His life had been ordinary until this night, but now he knew nothing would ever be the same again. The storm outside did not calm through the night. Rain hammered the roof as if the sky itself wanted to break through and enter the small house. The man sat on the edge of a chair, staring at the sleeping woman on his couch and the bundle beside her. Every time the baby shifted, a faint glow escaped the cloth, lighting the shadows in the room like tiny sparks. He rubbed his face with his hands, trying to convince himself that it was all a dream, but the coldness in his chest told him it was not. He had opened his door to something not from this earth, and now he was caught inside a secret he did not understand. Hours passed, but he did not sleep. Instead, he listened to the rhythm of the baby's breathing and the faint hum that came from the glowing fabric. Sometimes it was quiet, like a heartbeat. Sometimes it grew louder, almost like a whisper in the air. He wondered if anyone else could hear it, or if it was meant only for him. Every time he leaned closer, the sound seemed to crawl into his mind, stirring feelings he could not name: fear, awe, and something stranger. Something that felt like destiny. At dawn, the rain slowed. Weak sunlight crept through the curtains, but the world outside still carried the heavy silence of the storm. The woman stirred, coughing weakly as her eyes opened. She looked around as though expecting danger to be waiting for her, but when her gaze fell on him, some of the fear in her expression faded. She struggled to sit up, and he rushed to help her. Her body was thin and frail, but there was a strength in her eyes, a fire that refused to die even in weakness. "You brought us inside?" she whispered, her voice rough and dry. He nodded. "You collapsed at my door, you and the child." His eyes fell on the bundle. "Who are you? What is happening here?" Her lips trembled. For a long moment, she did not answer, only looked at the baby with an expression so deep it felt like a wound. Finally, she spoke. "He is not safe." "Not anywhere. Not even on this world." She reached out, pulling the baby closer to her chest, as though the simple act of speaking about him put him in danger. "They will find us. They always do." The man leaned forward, his voice tense. "Who will? Who are they?" Her eyes lifted. To him, glowing faintly in the dim morning light. "Hunters," she whispered. "Those who serve the broken throne. They want no heir to live. If they take him, the galaxy will burn, and if he dies, everything dies with him. You do not understand. Yet, but you will." The man felt a shiver run through him. Galaxy hunters, broken throne. It sounded like madness, but the scars on her arms, the terror in her eyes, and the unnatural glow on the child's skin made it impossible to dismiss. "Why me?" he asked. "Why my door? Out of all the people in this world, why bring him?" Here she looked at him for a long time, as if weighing his soul. "Because humans are unseen," she said finally. "Your world is young. The galaxy forgets you exist. That is why you are the only place I could hide him. They will search the stars, but they will not look here. Not yet." He sat back, the weight of her words pressing on him. She was asking him to believe in something far larger than his life had ever been. He had worked ordinary jobs, lived ordinary days, dreamed only ordinary dreams. And yet here was proof that the universe was wider and darker than anything he had imagined in somehow. He had been chosen to hold a secret that could decide the fate of it all. The baby stirred, a soft cry filling the room. The woman hushed him quickly, but when the cloth slipped, the man saw the strange glowing marks again. This time they were clearer, sharper, almost like a language written into the child's skin. The lines pulsed with each heartbeat, forming patterns that seemed to move. He could not look away. For a moment it felt as though the marks were speaking to him in a language older than time, a voice pressing into his mind without words. "What is he?" the man whispered, his voice barely audible. The woman's face grew tight with fear and pride at once. She leaned closer, her voice breaking with emotion. He is the last of the true blood. If he survives, hope survives. If not, the stars will fall to ash. Before the man could respond, a low sound shook the air. At first he thought it was thunder again, but it was too steady, too mechanical. The windows trembled faintly, the glass buzzing against the frames. The woman's eyes went wide with terror. She rushed to the window, her body swaying with weakness. But her gaze sharpened as she peered outside. The man joined her and felt his stomach twist. Through the gray clouds above the town, shapes moved, dark, sharp-edged ships, their lights flashing silently against the morning sky. They were not planes, not anything human. They drifted like predators, scanning, hunting. "They've found us," the woman whispered, clutching the baby tighter. Her whole body shook, but not from weakness now. It was fear, raw and deep. Turned to the man, her voice urgent and desperate. "You must choose. Hide him, protect him. If they take him, it is over." The man's heart pounded, his breath caught in his chest. Outside, shadows slid across the sky. Inside, the baby's skin glowed brighter, as though answering to the danger above. The hum from the cloth grew louder, filling the room with an energy that raised the hair on his arms. Then came the sound, 3 heavy knocks against the front door. Not human knocks. It's too heavy, too precise. The woman's grip on the baby tightened as she whispered, "They are here." The sound of the knocks still echoed in the man's bones, even though the house had fallen into silence again. Each strike had carried a weight that was not human, a rhythm that was too exact, too controlled. The woman's breathing quickened. As she pressed the baby closer to her chest, her eyes darting toward the door as though it would burst open at any moment. The man stood frozen, his muscles tight, sweat breaking on his forehead even though the room was cold. It faced ordinary fears before storm's debts. Broken dreams, but nothing compared to the chill that ran through him now. Whatever was outside his door was not meant for this world. It was looking for the child lying in his living room. Another knock came, louder this time, shaking the wood and rattling the frame. The man's instincts screamed to stay silent, to hide, but he knew that silence was useless. Whoever or whatever was out there already knew. He forced his legs to move, stepping toward the door, but the woman grabbed his arm with surprising strength.
Us.
Her eyes burned with fear and fury. "Do not open it," she whispered.
Us.
"They will not ask. They will take."
What?
But the knocking stopped. A long, heavy pause stretched through the air, followed by a sound that chilled them both, a voice. Deep, mechanical, layered with tones that did not belong to any throat on earth. "We know what you carry. Hand over the child, and you will live. Resist, and you will burn with him." The man's heart hammered so hard it hurt. He had no weapon, no plan, no reason to believe he could stand against beings that could descend from the sky in ships, larger than buildings. And yet, as he looked at the woman clutching her child, her body trembling but her eyes unbroken, something inside him shifted. He could not open that door, could not hand them over. Even if it meant his own life, even if it meant standing against the impossible, he knew in his bones what choice had to be made. The baby stirred, letting out a soft cry. The sound, so innocent and small, seemed to ignite the fury outside. Door shook violently as a heavy force struck it, the wood groaning under the impact. Dust fell from the ceiling. The woman gasped and pulled the baby tighter. "They will break through," she whispered. "You must hide him." Before the man could answer, the door split open with a crash, splinters flying across the room. Figures stepped inside, tall and armored, their bodies hidden in black suits that shimmered like liquid metal. Their faces were covered by helmets that glowed with narrow strips of red light. They moved with perfect precision, each step heavy and deliberate, carrying weapons that hummed with an energy the man had never seen. Their presence alone filled the room with suffocating dread, as though the very air bent under their will. The leader stepped forward, its voice vibrating through the walls. "The child. Now." The woman shook her head, tears filling her eyes, her arms tightening protectively around her baby. "Never. The alien tilted its head, studying her, then shifted its gaze to the man. For a terrible moment, he felt those red lights cut into him, scanning his body, his mind, his soul, when it said the word cold and sharp, "This is not your fight. Give us what is ours and you will be spared." The man's throat was dry, his body trembling, but he found his voice. "He's not yours." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then the alien raised its hand and the others moved forward. The woman cried out, clutching the child, but before they could reach her, the baby suddenly released a burst of light. It was blinding, raw, a pulse of pure energy that threw the armored figures backward as if an unseen explosion had erupted inside the house. The windows shattered, the walls shook, and the man fell to the floor, covering his face against the brightness. When the light faded, the hunters were struggling to rise. Their armor cracked and sparking with strange currents. The baby had stopped crying, but his skin glowed brighter than before, the marks across his body burning like fire written into flesh. The woman stared at her child with both terror and wonder, her lips trembling as she whispered, "It has begun." The man pulled himself up, his ears ringing, his heart racing. He had no idea what he had just witnessed, but one thing was clear. This child was more powerful than anything the hunters could control. The aliens hissed in strange voices, their weapons rising again, sparks of light dancing at their tips. The leader's voice thundered through the broken room. "The air must not live. End it now." The man grabbed a piece of wood from the shattered door, holding it like a weapon, though it was laughable against the machines of war. Still, he planted himself between the hunters and the mother, his voice raw but firm. "You'll have to go. Through me first." The hunters advanced, the room buzzing with deadly energy. The woman screamed, clutching the baby, her eyes filled with despair. The man's grip on the wood tightened, knowing it would not be enough. Knowing he might die in seconds, but refusing to step aside. And then, before the first shot was fired, the baby's marks blazed again brighter, stronger, filling the room, with a pulse that made the air itself tremble. The hunters froze, their weapons stuttering. The baby's eyes opened, glowing like stars, and a sound filled the house, not a cry. It's not a scream, but something deeper, older, that seemed to shake the very foundation of the earth. The hunters staggered back, fear breaking their perfect movements for the first time. One of them shouted in a tongue the man could not understand, and the leader's voice cut through the chaos. "Retreat, for now." And just like that, they stepped back into the storm, their bodies fading into the rain, their presence vanishing as suddenly as it had come. The house was left broken, the air still charged with power, while silence falling heavy in their wake. The man dropped the wood, his chest heaving, his mind reeling from what had just happened. He looked at the woman, who clutched her glowing child. With tears streaming down her face, she whispered in a voice that shook with both relief and dread, "They will return, with more." The man swallowed hard, staring at the shattered doorway where the hunters had vanished. His ordinary life was gone. Whatever had begun tonight would not end until blood, fire, and stars themselves answered for it. The night had become a battlefield of silence and noise. The human small house was no longer a shelter, but a trap, every wall echoing with the sound of approaching danger. The hunters had come with shadows in the sky and heavy knocks that rattled the door like a drumbeat of doom. He had thought of refusing, of fighting them off somehow. But the woman's eyes told him the truth before she even spoke. They were found. There would be no mercy. Not for her. Not for the baby. Not even for him. The woman staggered, her arms trembling as she held the child close. She whispered words that sounded more like prayer than command. "We must leave now. The ground is not safe anymore. They will burn this place until nothing is left." Her voice broke, not because she feared for herself, but because the baby stirred, glowing brighter with each knock at the door. The hunters could sense it. They would never stop until they had him. Man looked around his home, his books, his worn furniture, the little life he had built piece by piece. All of it suddenly felt weightless, fragile, meaningless, compared to the urgency of what stood before him. He grabbed his jacket, shoved it over his shoulders, and without thinking said the words that would change his life. "Then show me where to go." The woman's weak smile held both sorrow and relief. She led him through the back door, the baby cradled tight against her chest. The rain had stopped, but the air carried the metallic taste of danger. Above, the ships drifted like vultures circling unseen prey. The man half expected a beam of light to cut through the clouds and end them all. But the sky stayed quiet, for now. They moved quickly, slipping through narrow streets. The woman guiding with surprising certainty, despite her weakness. "I had a safe house," she whispered between breaths, "long ago before the throne fell. If it still stands, we will find a way out." Words gave him no comfort. Every step felt like walking toward a truth he was not ready to face. He had never left his town, never traveled farther than the borders of his own world. And yet her voice spoke of something far beyond galaxies, thrones, hunters, hope, and doom. He wanted to ask 100 questions, but the urgency in her pace silenced him. At last they reached an abandoned warehouse at the edge of town. The walls were cracked, the windows broken. But the woman hurried inside with the familiarity of someone returning to a forgotten memory. She placed her hand against a rusted wall. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the wall trembled, split, and pulled back with a groan of ancient metal. Behind it lay darkness, and within that darkness, a ship. The man froze. It was nothing like the sleek images he had seen in films. This vessel was raw, scarred, built more for survival than beauty. Surface bore burns from battles, its frame patched with mismatched metal. But even in ruin, it radiated a power no human machine carried. He stared at it, his chest tightening. This was proof of everything she had said, proof that the universe was not a dream but a living, dangerous truth. The woman's voice snapped him out of his shock. "Help me." Together they pulled. Open the ramp, their bodies straining against its weight. The baby whimpered softly, the glow from his skin reflecting against the dull metal. They carried him aboard. The air inside smelled of dust and age, the silence broken only by the hum of machines waking from sleep. The woman collapsed into a seat, clutching her child. "You must fly it," she whispered. The man spun toward her. "Me, I don't even know how to drive anything but a car?" Her eyes locked on his, fierce despite her weakness. "The ship is alive. It will listen. Just touch the controls, and it will know." Every instinct told him this was madness, but the thunder of engines outside silenced his doubts. The hunters had found the trail. Lights cut through the warehouse windows, scanning beams sliding across the walls. The man ran to the front of the ship and pressed his hand against the strange controls. The ship stirred. Lights burst alive, engines roared. The floor trembled beneath his feet. He gasped as symbols lit up across the panels, shifting and rearranging themselves until they formed patterns his mind should not have understood, but somehow did. The ship did not teach him, it simply accepted him. The ramp closed just as beams of energy tore through the warehouse, exploding against the outer walls. The ship shuddered, but held. "Go," the woman cried. He pressed his hand forward, and the vessel answered. With a scream of vengeance, it rose, smashing through the roof, scattering debris into the night sky. For the first time in his life, the man saw the earth fall away beneath him. Cities became lights, oceans became shadows. And then, with one sudden burst, the sky shattered into the endless black of space. Stars spread before him in infinite silence, a canvas that stretched forever. His breath caught. The world he had always known was only a grain of dust, and now he was beyond it. But wonder quickly turned to terror. Behind them, the hunters followed. Massive warships, their hulls sharp like blades, lit the void with red light. They moved faster than he thought possible, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. The woman, pale and trembling, clutched her child closer. "You must not stop. No matter what happens, you must not let them take him." The man gripped the controls, his hands shaking. The ship seemed to sense his fear, guiding him, pulling him into the current of the stars. But the hunters were closing in, their weapons ready to strike. He could see the glow building in their cannons, the shadows of death reaching toward him. He whispered to himself, not even knowing why, "If this is my fate, then so be it." The baby stirred again, and in that instant the ship changed. symbols flared brighter across the panels. Energy coursed through the vessel, and with a scream of light, it shot forward at a speed that tore the stars into streaks. Space bent, reality blurred, and the hunters fell behind. For a heartbeat, silence. For a breath, safety. But then the ship's warning lights screamed, flashing symbols that even the man could understand. They had escaped, yes, but the jump had placed them directly in the path of something far worse. Through the vast window, a shadow emerged. A warship unlike the others, massive, ancient, its surface crawling with power. It locked onto them instantly, filling the void with its presence. Woman's eyes went wide with terror. The void outside the ship was not silent anymore. It trembled under the shadow of something so vast, so ancient, that the human felt his heart stop the moment he saw it. The hunters' vessels had been sharp and predatory, but this was different. This ship was a leviathan, its size blotting out the stars, its surface scarred with the marks of 1,000 wars. It radiated power older than empires, a presence so heavy that even the stars seemed to bow before it. The small vessel, patched and fragile, looked like a dying bird in the shadow of a predator that could swallow it whole. The human's hands shook as he held the controls, but the ship's systems pulsed beneath his palms, guiding him, whispering through symbols he still did not understand. He wanted to turn back, to run, but he knew there was no path behind them, only the hunters. Closing in, the warship ahead was the only wall left between them and freedom. Though freedom itself seemed impossible now, the woman's voice broke the silence, raw and trembling. That is not just a ship, that is the herald, a vessel of the thrones. Betrayers, it should not be here. She clutched the child so tightly it seemed she feared even light itself would try to steal him away. Her skin was pale, her breath shallow, but her eyes were sharp with terror. The human forced himself to speak, his voice dry. What do they want with him? It's just a baby. Her head turned slowly, and the sorrow in her gaze cut deeper than any blade. He is not just a baby. He is blood of the lost line, heir to the throne that once united the stars. If he lives, he will grow into the power they fear. If he dies, the galaxy falls to endless war. Her hand tightened on the cloth wrapped around the infant, and they will not stop until he is gone. The herald moved closer, its weapons glowing like suns waiting to burn. The man's chest tightened. He was no soldier, no hero. He was an ordinary human who had opened a door on a stormy night, and yet here he was, standing between a child and the endless teeth of the universe, his fear twisted into anger. Why him? Why was he chosen to carry this burden? As if sensing his thoughts, the ship beneath his hands hummed with strange warmth. Symbols shifted, aligning like stars in a constellation, and he felt something stir inside him. The vessel was not guiding him blindly. It was waiting, offering him a choice. It would not act unless he did. The woman's voice was hoarse. You can still turn back. Turn to your world. Forget what you have seen. They will not follow if you abandon us. But you could survive. Her words cut like a knife, but there was no deceit in them. She was giving him a way out. A chance to walk away. He stared at her, then at the baby, whose faintly glowing skin pulsed with life. The infant's tiny fingers curled, reaching unconsciously toward him. In that moment, something shifted inside the human. All his fear, all his doubt, folded into a single truth: he could not abandon them, could not let hunters or betrayers decide the fate of a child who had no choice in his birth. He might have been ordinary yesterday, but now the universe had brought its storm to his doorstep, and he refused to step aside. His voice was steady when he spoke. I'm not leaving. If the galaxy wants this child, they'll have to go through me first. The woman stared at him, disbelief and awe mixing in her eyes. No human has ever interfered in their wars, she whispered. Your kind were always forgotten. Maybe it's time they remember, he said, his hands tightening. On the controls, the ship seemed to roar in agreement. Its engines ignited, light blazing across its frame, as though answering the fire in his words. The herald responded, its weapons locking on. The void filled with tension so sharp it could cut through steel. The human pulled the vessel into a dive, weaving through the darkness as beams of energy split the void around him. Explosions rippled across empty space, each shockwave rattling the walls. He gritted his teeth, every move pulled from instinct and guided by the ship's unseen will. Still, he knew they could not outrun forever. The Herald was too vast, too powerful. The woman clutched the baby and shouted over the thunder of battle. "There's one chance. Send a message. Your world may hear it. If they answer, perhaps." She did not finish, but her eyes carried a desperate hope. The human found a panel glowing with symbols. His hand hovered above it, and the ship responded, opening a channel he did not understand but somehow trusted. He spoke, his voice shaking. "But clear, this is Earth. My name doesn't matter. I have a child not of this world aboard my vessel. They are hunting us. If you hear this, we need help. Please. We need humanity to rise." Diminished into the void, cast out, like a prayer into silence. For long moments, there was no answer, only the relentless chase of the Herald. The man felt despair closing in, crushing him beneath the weight of the stars. Perhaps no one would hear. Perhaps Earth would stay silent, blind to the war that had come to its doorstep. But then the ship shuddered, and a new light filled the void. Not the glow of enemy weapons, not the fire of the Herald, but a fleet. Ships unlike any the woman had seen, unlike any the hunters had prepared for. Sharp lines, steel frames, weapons bristling with power, carrying flags she did not recognize. But the man did. His breath caught in his throat. It was Earth. Humanity had answered. The Herald paused in the void, its size still terrible. But for the first time, the hunters hesitated. They had underestimated a forgotten world. They had ignored humanity, blind to its strength. And now Earth's warships stood in the stars, silent but unyielding. The woman whispered, awe trembling in her voice. "They came. Your people came." The human's heart pounded, his fear replaced with something fiercer. "This is our choice," he whispered, "and we choose to fight." The fleets faced one another in the endless dark, silence stretching like a blade about to strike. Then the void erupted as Earth's weapons lit the stars, and the battle began. The stars burned with fire. Space itself seemed to tremble as humanity's fleet clashed with the Herald. Beams of light tore across the void. Explosions thundered silently. Fragments of broken ships drifted like sparks across the darkness. The human sat at the controls of the small alien vessel. His hands clenched tight, his heart racing with every strike that shook the universe around him. He had never seen war. He had never imagined the silence of space could be so loud, filled with destruction and fire. Yet Earth's warships did not falter. They fought with a fury that stunned even the woman, who had seen 1,000 battles before. Humanity had been forgotten, underestimated, dismissed as a quiet, primitive race. But now the galaxy would remember their power. The Herald, vast and ancient, moved like a beast that refused to die. Its cannons roared, its shields glowed, and each wave of fire destroyed human ships. Yet every time one fell, 2 more pushed forward. The man's chest burned with pride, fear, and disbelief. Earth was standing. Earth was fighting. 8. For a child they did not know. For a secret they had only just discovered. Inside the small ship, the baby cried softly, the glow of his skin pulsing with every strike outside. The woman's arms tightened around him, her face pale with exhaustion.
Oh.
She had been bleeding since. The escape, her strength fading with each breath, but her eyes never left the child. Even as the void shook with war, her entire world was cradled in her arms. The human glanced at her, his throat tightening. "Hold on, just a little longer. Earth will protect us." She smiled faintly, her lips trembling. "Not me. My time is already ending. But him. He has a future. You must give it to him." The man shook his head. "Don't talk like that. We're going to make it." But she only looked at him with the truth he could not deny. She knew her end had already come. She was surviving only through will, her body, already too broken from hunger, from running, from wounds unseen. Yet her spirit did not falter. Her voice was soft but fierce as she leaned closer. Promise me you will raise him, protect him. No matter what he becomes, no matter what he carries, do not let the galaxies shape him into their monster. Promise me you will let him be. More? The man's chest ached. He looked at the child, small and fragile, his skin glowing with marks of destiny that no human could ever understand. This baby was not his. He was not even of his world. And yet he already was. The storm at his door, the cries in the night, the desperate plea, all of it had tied them together. He could not deny it. He would not, I promise, he whispered, his voice breaking. The woman's smile deepened, her tears falling silently. She pressed her lips against the child's forehead one last time, whispering words in a language the man could not understand. Then her body sagged, her breath slipping away like fading light. The glow in her eyes dimmed and she was still. The man's throat closed, grief crashing over him like a wave. He reached for her, but there was no response, only silence. The baby wailed, his cries sharper, louder, glowing brighter as if sensing his mother's departure. The marks on his skin burned like fire, filling the cabin with light. The herald seemed to answer. Its weapons flared, striking with renewed fury. The human ship shook, alarms screaming, panels flashing warnings. Earth's fleet struggled against the Leviathan, their lines breaking under the storm. It felt as though hope itself was being torn apart. The man clutched the controls, shouting through the channel, "Don't stop. Fight. We can't lose now." His voice was hoarse, desperate. He knew Earth's warships could not match the Herald's ancient power. But humanity fought with something more edge, loyalty, defiance. They refused to surrender, and then the baby's cries changed. The light that burst from his small body filled the cabin, spreading across the ship, spilling into the void. Out the glowing lines on his skin pulsed like veins of fire, sending waves of energy through the vessel. The herald paused, its cannons faltering. Even the void itself seemed to hold its breath. The human shielded his eyes as the light grew stronger, brighter, until it pierced the herald's shields like a blade. The massive ship shuddered, its ancient frame trembling as cracks of energy ripped across its hull. Earth's fleet seized the chance, unleashing their firepower with everything they had left. Together, the glow of the child and the fury of humanity struck the herald. With a final roar, the Leviathan split apart, flames tearing through its core. The explosion was so vast it lit the stars for miles, scattering wreckage into the endless dark. The herald was no more. Silence followed, heavy and endless. Humanity's fleet floated among the ruins, scarred and broken, but alive. For the first time, the void was free of the predator's shadow. The man sat trembling, staring at the baby who now lay quiet, his eyes half open, glowing faintly with stars inside them. The child had ended a ship that had survived centuries of war. The baby had shaken the galaxy. The communication channel buzzed. A voice, firm but astonished, filled the cabin. "Unknown vessel. This is Earth Command. We have received your signal. Identify yourself." The man swallowed hard. His eyes drifted to the woman's still body, then to the baby in his arms. Slowly, he lifted the child, holding him close. His voice cracked, but it carried with steady resolve. "I'm no one. Just a man who opened his door. At this child. He's mine now." There was silence on the other end, the weight of his words heavy even across the void. Finally, the voice returned, softer this time. "Then we will protect you, both of you. Humanity stands with you." The man closed his eyes, tears slipping down his cheeks. He had promised the woman, and he would keep that promise, no matter the cost. He looked at the child, whose glowing eyes stared back at him, endless galaxies burning inside. "Whatever you are," he whispered, "whatever you will become, you are mine now." The stars outside seemed to lean closer, as though listening. The war was over, but the future had only begun. The baby's destiny was greater than any throne, any empire, any galaxy. And now, that destiny rested in the hands of humanity.